Chapter 12. Crissa. 22 Narrans, 576 AF. I aged slowly, and for that I can be grateful, for it meant that Father did not notice as I finally blossomed into womanhood. I have no doubts that, had he thought of it, he would have sold me without a second's hesitation to alleviate the growing debt of the farm. But he did not, for I still appeared much younger than I actually was. But for all my youthful appearance, I was no longer a child. Vitrick taught me that. He continued to follow me whenever I cleaned his mother's house, his perpetual presence both irritating and confusing me. I met his questions and curiosity with stony silence, listened to his outlandish stories with reluctant interest. He gave me gifts of flowers, which I cast aside with strange regret. I knew nothing of friendship, much less courtship, and so did not understand his fascination with me. The summer I turned 17, his interest seemed to increase. He followed me constantly whenever I came to the village, though his mother and I both glared at him in disapproval. He bought me gifts of candies from the general goods store, gave me tiny fireworks to take home to my brothers and sisters. The nervousness he created in me grew, but though I tried to avoid him, he always found me. Since Rennick's death, I had grown accustomed to walking the distance between the village and our farm, and found it peaceful and pleasant. The late summer days were warm, the sky brilliant and beautiful, golden shafts of light spearing through the branches of the trees. I was smiling to myself as I returned home, my pockets heavy with the coin I had made that day. Alice's eldest daughter had married a woodcutter and had hired me to clean her house after I was done with her mother's. I contemplated what I would spend the money on: a new kettle for our meals, or new shingles for our roof, which continued to leak during heavy rain. "Hello, Crissa." My good mood vanished as Vitrick appeared beside me. I glared at him, stopping in the middle of the road. "What do you want?" He smiled, used to my unfriendliness. "It's a beautiful day for a walk, isn't it?" I crossed my arms over my chest and scowled, waiting. "I was thinking I might walk you home." My eyes narrowed in suspicion. "Why?" "Because I want to." He shrugged. "Isn't that enough?" I shook my head. "Go home, Vitrick." His smile turned strained. "I really would like to walk you home." "No." I turned on my heel and began walking away, convinced that would be the end of it. He grabbed my arm and spun me around. The charming smile was gone, replaced by honest frustration. "Why won't you let me be nice to you? What's wrong with us being friends?" His grip on my arm pressed on a bruise, making it ache, but I refused to let him see the pain it caused me. I simply stared at him, my emotions swirling within me, too fast and confusing to sort out. He was close to me, close enough that I could smell his skin, could see the way his eyes shifted between blue and gray. He had grown tall and broad-shouldered while I had been busy not noticing him, and I found myself itching to touch the sun-kissed hair that curled over his collar. My chest began to ache, and I realized I wasn't breathing. Vitrick swore and released my arm. "Fine, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have bothered you. I'll leave you alone from now on." He started back toward the village. A familiar emotion wriggled through the others. Guilt. He had only ever tried to be nice to me. It really was unfair that I had treated him this way. "Wait." He paused, turning back toward me. I'm sorry." The words were painful, but I made myself say them. "I don't have any friends. I don't know what to do." His smile was lopsided. "Being friends is easy. You just talk, and the other person listens." He wants to know my secrets. I shoved the thought away. Talk about what? Anything. Everything. Books you've read, places you've been, what you did today. He was standing too close to me again, and there was a glint in his eye. He was stealing all of my air. You really want to talk about the floors I scrubbed in your sister's house? Or the number of weeds I pulled out of your mother's garden? He chuckled. Sure. He gently touched my cheek. Do you want to talk about it? Not really, I breathed. I was still frozen in place, unable to move as his face slowly lowered and his lips found mine. I did not react. I couldn't. Every intense, devastating feeling I'd ever known cascaded through me, focused to a fine, needle-sharp point. Chrissa? Brandon's presence in my mind, concerned. I pushed him back out hastily. Vitrick stopped kissing me, and the separation was a relief, and yet I ached with the sudden loss. I'm sorry, he muttered, his cheeks flaming. I just thought you might, like me, like I like you. I'm sorry. I swallowed, forcing myself to breathe as I raised my fingertips to my lips. His shoulders hunched defensively. I'm sorry. He turned away. Vitrick. This time it was I who reached out to him, my fingers clutching the sleeve of his shirt, forcing him to look at me. Can you do that again? His grin was lightning fast, and he pulled me into his arms, his mouth covering mine. I kissed him back, and twined my fingers at last into his soft hair. He tasted of sunlight and warm honey, and it seemed I had been starved for him my whole life. When we at last broke apart, we were both breathing heavily, our bodies aching in ways neither of us fully understood. We didn't speak. I don't know what we would have said in that moment anyway. He took my hand in silence, smiling as he laced his fingers with mine. I was still confused, my heart a heavy knot in my chest, my head strangely light. I still did not know if I even liked him. But I let him walk me home. "576 AF to 577 AF. My stolen moments with Vitrick became yet another of my secrets, although it was infinitely preferable to the others I kept. I do not know why I did not tell my siblings, for I'm sure they would have understood and been glad for my happiness. Perhaps it was because, for the first time, I had something that was wholly wonderful in mine, and I selfishly had no desire to share. Perhaps it was because I had no wish to untangle the knot of emotion that Vitrick caused whenever he was near me, did not want to examine my feelings and tear them apart and see what lurked beneath, and I worried they would force me to. Whatever the reason, I did not tell them, nor did I tell Vitrick our secrets, though I think that he guessed. He ceased to ask me about the bruises that covered my arms, but his frown spoke volumes, and I could see the worry building in his eyes. When the concern grew too great, I would kiss him until he forgot it again, preventing questions I could not answer. Summer faded into fall. Our harvest was better that year than it had been since our mother had died, though our father had at last given up any pretense of caring at all for the farm or for his children. I spent more time in the village, though the extra work I took on was truly just an excuse to see Vitrick, rather than a desire to make a few more coins. Winter came, bitter and cold. I barely noticed. I battled waist-deep drifts of snow, trekking to the village each day in the hopes that I might see Vitrick. He rarely disappointed me, slipping away from his house to kiss me in the woods, warming me for the long walk home. Spring arrived at last, melting away the snows. With it came the peddlers, and news from other places, which Vitrick passed on to me during our lingering walks home. There was unrest in the capital of Valestus, and famine in Cardoza. A university in the far-off kingdom of Tante had been closed due to a war I didn't understand, and its students were rioting. But the news made little sense to me. My whole world for so long had been the farm and the village and the mile between them, that I barely remembered the maps Janice had shown me when I was little. Vitrick saw this, and bought a map from one of the peddlers to show me. We sat beneath the great trees in a small clearing, my head cradled on his shoulder as he explained the vast expanse of the world to me. The day was warm and languorous, the air filled with the drowsy scent of roses in bloom as he planned out his dreams for us to explore the world together. "We'll travel to Tante and see the Marama Falls." His eyes were green today and bright with excitement. "Then we'll go to Omvalivesh in the ice flats and see the ice palace of the elves." I smiled, remembering. "I'll have to get a Pegasus for my sister." "We'll get a Pegasus for each of them." He grinned and kissed the tip of my nose. "Then we can go to Cardoza and see the Royal University." "What about Sinvali? I thought you wanted to look for that lost city of gold." "Delkeptra? We'll do that first." His arm tightened around me. "Just let me know when you're ready to leave." I swallowed, reality settling like a heavy weight onto my shoulders. It was a pretty fantasy, one I yearned for, but how could I leave the others when Father's black moods were becoming all the more frequent? He raised his fists and his voice nearly every night, raining hate down upon us like hailstones. He had found a short horsewhip somewhere, we never knew where he had acquired it, and used it to strike at us, catching us around the legs and shoulders when we upset him, leaving stinging marks of fire on our skin. He did not even weep any more when his rages finished, but simply collapsed, his eyes hollow and vacant. How could I abandon my brothers and sisters to his cruelty? I longed for the dream Vitrick spun before me, but I could not leave. He pressed me for promises, and I could only kiss him helplessly, unable to speak, knowing anything I said would be empty. Summer drew closer, and with it, my 18th birthday. Vitrick's kisses grew more insistent, and I hesitated as he pushed me toward a step I was not ready to take. I had grown up on a farm. I had no illusions about the ways of men and women. But it was a step I was unsure of, one I worried over. If I were to get pregnant, Vitrick and I would be forced to marry, and my siblings would be all alone. I was not ready, and in the end, it turned out not to matter.